Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick, and we got Sean and Harrison again with us tonight. How we doing, boys?
Good, fellas. What's
Good. How we
going on?
doing?
All right. So before we get going, just like, share, follow our page on Facebook, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep interacting with us. We post articles and questions throughout the week. And then you can obviously come on and talk to us during the show. So we got the Hall of Fame talk leading off. In case everyone's living under a rock, here is the list of Hall of Fame inductees. David Ortiz. Okay. So, I can't with baseball right now as a whole. Like, they're completely just trashing everything. I feel like, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words right now. I get the argument that Bonds and Clemens and all the steroid guys shouldn't be in. I get that side of the argument. But you've let Jeff Bagwell in. You've let Ivan Rodriguez in. They're not confirmed steroid users, but come on. The eyeball test says they were. What are your immediate thoughts off the top?
Go ahead, Harrison.
Go ahead, John. Oh no, you go
No,
first.
you go ahead.
All right,
go,
fine.
You go. I'll bring it home. You go.
All right. So I posted that Doug Glanville article today on the page because I thought it's a good perspective, an interesting perspective to see.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of players out there that feel that way. Doug Glanville, to summarize it, basically kind of wrote an open letter saying, Barry Bonds isn't a Hall of Famer and he's okay with that. Because as much as Barry Bonds' stats jump off the page, even without steroids, he still would have been in the Hall of Famer, and I don't think anybody argues that. At the end of the day, here's a guy who influenced the outcome of games. And when you look across the spectrum of baseball for all those years, you had records that were altered, you had statistics that were altered, you had championships that were decided, you had careers that were impacted. There were guys that lost their jobs to PED users when they weren't. And so Glanville's perspective was, I wasn't a great ball player. I'm not a Hall of Famer, and that's okay. But I played the game clean. And for the guys like me that did that, we look at the guys like Bonds and basically say, tough dude, you cheated. You're a liar. You're a cheater. You're not good for the game of baseball. You're not a good representative of the game of baseball, and therefore you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. We shouldn't celebrate you. Was kind of the overall theme there. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Baseball has this nasty black eye, and I totally get Glanville's perspective, and a lot of people feel that way. For a long time, I was a keep the steroid users out of baseball. We can acknowledge them, but let's not memorialize and honor what they did. The flip side of it is, how do you do that in an era of baseball when you've already kind of sort of done it? You've either got to acknowledge all of it or none of it. You can't do it part way. And see your examples of Bagwell and Rodriguez. Were they confirmed? No. But were they suspected? Absolutely. And did they? Probably. A lot of folks did at the time. But the flip side of it is that Bonds was doing it. Everybody knew he was doing it. It was very clear what was going on. Just like everybody goes back to David Ortiz. Once the testing was in place, he never had a dirty test. Before that, in the Mitchell report, it was found that he may or may not have had steroids in his system. Is that enough to convict a guy as a steroid user? I don't know. But a guy like Manny Ramirez got suspended twice for it. Does that tell you he was a user? Absolutely. Did he do it earlier in his career? Who knows? So it's hard because you just don't have any evidence. Technically, steroids were, illegal, but never tested for. So how do you go back and punish guys for tests that they may or may not have failed had they actually taken them? So I think baseball's in a tough spot where no matter what you do, you can't win. But baseball's got to go through a reconciliation process and basically say, we're either going to acknowledge this or not. And honestly, I think baseball should just come clean. Pete Rose, you're in. Barry Bonds, you're in. Clemens, you're in. We're going to cleanse all of our old sins. We're not going to ignore them anymore. It is what it is. And let's celebrate the guys that, were the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. And it would be way different if the Hall was this and not this. They've let so many people in that shouldn't be in that, if it was a small Hall, and it was very pristine, then fine, keep them out. Okay, because you want to keep your baseball pristine, and it has that aura of perfection around it. Like, listen, like they didn't let. I think I made this comment on Facebook. Like, they didn't let blacks in the game for a long time. Black people weren't in the game for a long time, and then when Jackie Robinson came in and Roy Campanella came in, they were still under scrutiny, right? And then this year they just let in the Negro Leagues. How did it take 80 years for them to acknowledge the Negro Leagues as like legit baseball players? I mean, baseball is drowning in themselves. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sean?
I think theoretically, what Glanville had said in that article, I mean, I guess I understand his point of view being a marginal pro. Like, that guy wasn't a borderline Hall of Famer that isn't in because of steroid guys, right? Like, but I get his point of view. However, baseball is acting like they didn't know these guys were taking steroids while they were playing and saving the game.
Right.
And now we found out after their career is over and we're going to keep them away from the Hall of Fame. Like, that's not how it played out. They knew what these guys were doing while they were playing. They knew it was a problem, just like they knew cocaine, all those other drugs was a problem in the 70s and the 80s. They knew that steroids was making its way around baseball.
Yep.
They didn't need Jose Canseco to write a book. They didn't need the Mitchell report to come out. They didn't need any of that. They looked the other way because baseball was dying, as Morgan says in his post. Baseball was dying. Guys like Bonds kept it alive. Guys like McGuire kept it alive. Guys like Rafael Palmeiro to an extent. I mean, you had guys that were just launching balls night in and night out over the summer, and it was getting asses in the seats. So they looked the other way. And now the fucking moral police wants to come at them and be like, oh, it's cheating. And baseball's like, you're right, we're going to keep them out of the Hall of Fame. It's just really hypocritical. That's my biggest issue about the whole thing, to be 100% honest. So when we boil it down to one thing, that's my issue. If they truly didn't know what was happening in the summer of the 90s and they just found out afterwards, by all means, keep them out of the Hall of Fame. But they didn't. They knew about it as it was going on, and they looked the other way. And now they're trying to play like they didn't know. And that's my biggest problem with the whole thing. So in my opinion, they all belong in. I don't care. It's cheaters, non-cheaters, steroids, non-steroids. If you have the numbers, you belong, because that's not a true Hall of Fame right now, because as we have talked about forever, there's plenty of guys in there that have been suspected of taking steroids. So either you let in guys like Barry Bonds, who, I mean, we've been through the numbers. It is just ridiculous. Would steroids help them? Yes, steroids absolutely help the numbers. I don't think anyone would argue that.
Yeah, nope.
But unless you go in and like take out guys that you've already put in because they were suspected for steroids, I don't want to hear the steroid talk. Like, let in guys like Bonds and Clemens. It's just, it's, and again, I mean, we talk, the writers voting for it too is an absolute disgusting travesty too. I mean, that whole process of getting guys in needs to change, and needs to change now.
Yeah. Like Dan Shaughnessy not voting for Ortiz because he's still mad at him for a comment he made to him years ago.
Dude,
it's like, get out of here, you curly-haired freak.
It's all of it though. Like, it's a personal, the whole thing's a personal vendetta. And I don't care. There are some good guys on there that will, you know, they say that they're voting. Everyone, it's human nature to be personal against other people you don't like or think slighted you in some way. It's human nature. Like, some are worse than others, but everyone's doing it on some level.
Yeah.
Like, the whole process needs to change.
Yeah, the writers need to go. Writers should not be voting at all. It should go back to Little League Baseball when your coach came and handed you a ballot with everybody on your team's name and be like, who's going to the All-Star game? Who's going to the All-Star team? Okay? Players, coaches.
Is that, Nick, is that why you never got onto an All-Star team? Is that because your teammates didn't like you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's another subject for a different day, but
it's a couch session.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when I come up in 2 weeks and we have a couple of beers and talk about it, but and maybe cry. But anyways, like, it should be your peers. It should be your coaches. It should be, I mean, hell, even GMs, people that are in the game should be voting. These writers, like you said, with personal vendettas, absolute just ridiculous.
Let's put it to your point, Nick. Let's wrap it up in one qualification, one sentence. Folks that competed against you, whether it be coaches, whether it be players, whether it be management, they had to alter their day to compete against you. That's Those are the folks that should be voting on it, not the writers that followed them around every day, not the people that felt like they were slighted, not the people that get to listen to the other members of media. No, none of that shit. None of that
Right.
shit. The people that competed against you, that knew how difficult it was to compete against you, should be the ones that have a say in you getting in the Hall of Fame. And that's every sport, not just baseball. That should be every sport.
Just the whole writers thing, right? Like, say I'm an everyday baseball player, and I have talked to this writer day in, day out, and there's just that one day where I'm not feeling it. He asks me an off-the-cuff question, and I snap. Boom, there goes my Hall of Fame, just like that. One day. He now has a personal vendetta against me.
Yeah, you come off of a tough road loss in
Like-
Cleveland. Some Cleveland beat writer for the team you're not even on goes, "What do you think about the night?" And you're just like, "Who the hell are you? Go away."
Right.
And now you don't get his Hall of Fame vote 20 years down the road because,
yeah.
on some crappy Tuesday night when you were tired after a long game and a crappy flight, you snapped
that
at a guy.
happens.
Like, it's just silly.
And that
It's just silly.
happens, which is awful. Like, that happens. That's not an overblown scenario. Like,
No,
shit like that
it's not.
happens. It's terrible.
No, but I want to bring up Morgan's comment here for a second, because I think this is where the whole argument goes one way or the other. The whole idea, we used to get live, the 98 home run chase and Bonds home run chase, that was all must see TV. It was all a bunch of BS and baloney and fake news, because these guys were all juiced up. But at the end of the day, like, they created excitement around the game. They gave you the entertainment value we keep talking about the MLB doesn't have and the NFL has. But this is where you got to go down one of two paths. You're either going to sit on the side of integrity, where these guys were liars, cheaters, dirtbags. They altered games, they changed careers, they determined championships, all these things because they played dirty. Or these guys saved baseball by going down that road, making the game exciting. And MLB was complicit because they basically said, we know you guys are doing this, but please stop. They didn't take any action. So these guys were almost in some ways encouraged to do it because they knew they could put up gaudy numbers and get themselves in the record books and all that stuff. And MLB was going to let it happen. But at the same time, these guys are saving baseball. And that's where there's two paths to this argument. You're either going to take the integrity path of it, or the game and saving the game, the entertainment piece of it. And that's without the steroid era. I don't even know where baseball would be. As much as it sucks to talk about, as much as these guys, did what they did and influenced the game, at the end, you could literally look at McGwire, Sosa, and Bonds are probably the three guys most in charge of the fact that baseball is still alive, because they made baseball, we should start wearing red hats to say make baseball watchable again. Because that's what these guys did. They made the game fun. They made it worth watching. They brought, do you want your kids to emulate Barry Bonds? Absolutely not. The guy was a shithead, but the guy could hit a ball a mile with or without drugs.
Right. And I mean, Ken Caminiti came out in an ESPN article, or Sports Illustrated, I think it was. And I think he's passed away by now. I think he had a heart attack. So just to show you what, the downside of PEDs did. But in the article, he said that 85% of major league players that he knew were on PEDs at that time. 85% is not just a couple guys in the clubhouse.
No.
Figuring it out.
I mean, take that for what it's worth, though. Like, I mean, that's yes, he has no reason to lie. Like, I get that, but there's also no way to check that. I mean, he could come out and say 85% when it's closer to 40%, but 85% sounds so. Essentially, 85% says, "Hey, everyone was doing it. That's why I did it," and it kind of rationalizes his decision to take the steroids. I'm not saying he's a liar because I have no idea, but like, we got to take that for what it's worth too. Right. That's 85% is a crazy number.
Yeah, and there's no way when you look around the landscape of baseball, there's that many guys doing it. 85%
would mean like Doug Glanville was the only one on his team that wasn't taking. 85% is like one guy on each team not taking steroids. Is essentially that's a crazy number. 85%.
Okay, I mean, I get that for sure, but I mean, I'm sure not everybody took steroids for the bulk. No. A lot of people took that stuff to like recover. Not to be like Bonds, who was a twig, or Sammy Sosa, who was a twig.
Yep.
Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, they were all twigs, and then they bulked. They became the Bash Brothers. But there were other guys that came in, they didn't change a physical shape.
Sure.
It was just to recover quicker
Yeah.
after their games.
That was like
And-
Pettit taking HGH to recover and save his arm.
Right.
I agree. Oh, I just think just overall 85% seems like a crazy astronomical number. Now, it's probably closer to 85 than it is to 30, right? I mean, if we want to play
Yeah.
that game, it's probably closer to 85 than 30, but whatever. I mean, I guess we're getting off track here. That wasn't necessarily, but you know,
But still
that's
the
it's
fact-
just go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Just the
I'm done.
fact that like just the fact that like Bonds gets a lot of the heat, and like I mean Clemens does get his fair share, don't get me wrong, but he's kind of almost like back burner to Barry Bonds. Like
Yep.
And he shouldn't be. If Barry Bonds is gonna get the heat, Roger Clemens should be getting the heat too. Like just as much. But
I
I
agree.
mean oh goodness. I just like the bottom line is they got to go in. It was an era in baseball, dead ball era, the golden era, the cocaine era, if that's what you want to call it, steroid era. Like, it's just a part of baseball that is it necessarily good for the game? No, not necessarily, but neither was integration at that time. Like, I mean, like
Well, I just think
Harrison says, just clean the
I
slate
think
and start over.
Yeah, I agree. I think the common denominator here is baseball needs to take a look at the past. Like we need to study the history of baseball. This is what baseball needs to do, and say, hey, we screwed up here, 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 and here. We can't make those mistakes again, right? And you're continuing to make the same mistakes again by year after year, continuing to bring up the steroid era, if you will, and continue to vilify these guys as if we just found out. Everyone is aware of it. Everyone's aware of it. And if you care that much, if you don't want Barry Bonds to be in the same Hall of Fame as Ted Williams, then fine. Build a steroid wing in Cooperstown. Put all these steroid guys that belong in there in this steroid wing and use that portion of the Hall of Fame to explain the steroid era, what these guys did, put a little asterisk. I don't care. But these guys should be memorialized in some way for the way that they contributed to the game of baseball. Because by not putting them in there, you're essentially canceling it out. You're essentially saying baseball was harmed and not helped by these guys, which is just totally not true. Completely not true.
Right.
And the longer we go until that's rectified, like when it finally does become rectified, people are just going to look at it and just kind of poo-poo it, and it shouldn't be. Like these guys should be recognized for what they've contributed.
Yeah. This is MLB's version of cancel culture. Effectively, we all saw the whole thing with Dr. Seuss. Well, he wasn't a nice guy all the time, so we should take all of his books out. It's like, okay, we can pretend like this stuff didn't happen, but let's get real, people. Like, let's join reality again and be like, hey, let's tear down statues of people that from the Confederate side of the war because we didn't like their stances. Well, yeah, we can pretend like the history didn't happen, but it did. And I think that, so for the longest time, I was against the steroid guys getting in. And the more I've thought about it, the more it's like, but you can't ignore the fact this happened. Like, these are players that, like, when we think of, when we think of baseball, there's several, I mean, Roger Clemens was on my all-time team. To me, that's where he sits. And, he might be in the Mount Rushmore of the American League or the Mount Rushmore of all of baseball, but to just throw that aside because he did something we don't like it's just another version of cancel culture. And I wouldn't want to go down that road in real life. I don't want to go down that road with baseball either. We have to accept it for what it is, and to Sean's point, acknowledge it, and move on and give these guys the credit they deserve. Whether their numbers are pure or tainted, who cares at this point? They are what they are. They're in the books. MLB allowed it to happen. And I mean, is there like a really effective steroid policy still in place today? Does anybody even know if they still do all the testing they say they do? I mean, it'd be like Major League Baseball to just kind of forget about a policy and not enforce it. But every sport has this. Baseball had amphetamines in the 70s. Then they had the steroids and HGH things come up. The NFL had the amphetamine problem too. They also had cocaine, and they had a whole lot of steroid use in the 80s. And then they moved on to bounties and all these other things they did. And remember the Patriots with Spygate using video cameras to get signs off the sideline, and everybody's looking for an edge.
Right.
And this is just yet another edge.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I'm hung up on, and I'll end it with this because I'm going to end up repeating myself, but The big thing I'm hung up on is Major League Baseball allowing it to happen when it happened, and then turning around and saying, "Hey, what you guys did was bad. We're not going to, let you in the Hall of Fame." That's my biggest thing. Is they broke the rules. I'm not debating that they broke the rules. There was a rule in place. They broke it, but you facilitated them breaking the rules. So to me, it's very hypocritical to then turn around and say, "Well, you broke the rules, so you can't come into our, such an honorable place to be." Like it's a tough look, I think, for Major League Baseball.
I think Major League Baseball also, like right now, instead of addressing the issue like they should, this was the last year for Bonds. This was the last year for Clemens. Like, those guys are going to start fading off the list, and MLB's just going to sit back and wait. They're not going to address it. They're just going to let those guys get on the ballot, stay there for 10 years, however long, which is way too long to be on a ballot, I think. It's 10 years, right?
It is.
No,
Yeah.
Like, I'm way too long to be on a ballot. Like,
as long as you stay above 50%, right? You get you're on the ballot again.
Yeah, right.
Get out of there. If you haven't gotten it by year 5, like, go home. Sorry, like, not getting in. You're not.
And that's another thing, real quick, that pisses me off about these writers. These writers know the rules. They know the rules. So they kept Bonds and Clemens above that threshold, stringing them along for years and years and years, knowing full well that on the 10th year they still weren't going to vote them in. Like, that's such bullshit. You're stringing these guys along for 8 years. Like, if you know you're not going to vote them in after year 2, get it over with and give them 0% so they get off the ballot.
And then give him 71% so there's hope. He's only got to get 4% more of the votes, and then nosedive to 59 or whatever, dude. Get out of here. It's so stupid. I can't.
The process is stupid. All I hope, I guess, kind of my closing statement of this whole thing is that I don't care if Bonds gets in the Hall of Fame or not. In my mind, he's there. He's been there all along. Yeah. If I don't see him in Cooperstown, it doesn't matter. I still view him as a Hall of Famer because of what he did. But I just hope one day Major League Baseball gets a commissioner with their own set of cojones that goes in and fixes this crap. I would love to see it. I would love to see a commissioner go in with their own agenda, their own vision for baseball that goes in and just, just acknowledge it for what it is, call it what it is, educate people on what it was, but then reconcile it and bring and put these guys where they belong and stop the shenanigans with, did he or didn't he? And we don't know, but maybe he did. And yeah, is Bonds the dirtiest of all? Sure. The whole Balco thing blew up on him terribly. But at the end of the day, he's a Hall of Famer in my mind. And I think all three of us would agree, whether he's in there or not, he's a Hall of Famer in my mind. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. I just hope one day a commissioner goes in there with enough fortitude to actually fix this versus these puppets they keep rolling through that are just answering to the owners.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they think is going to happen. That if the commissioner comes out now and acknowledges it and educates people and puts them in, that all these young people that they're crying about are going to turn away from baseball. It's quite the exact opposite. It is quite the exact opposite. You finally acknowledge it, you move on, you accept it for what it is, you put these guys where they belong. Now you can start to move forward. And start growing the game for these young people who are the ones that are bitch moaning and complaining for them to be where they belong. Like, there's no downside. I just truly don't understand the downside of just coming out, just, it is what it is. Eat your crow, and then we'll move on. Like, I don't get the downside of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes into what our next segment's going to be, our fifth inning showdown, where we're going to talk about who do we think should be the face of baseball right now. Who should MLB promote and put on the face? Because like you said, like, we need the young people to come back to the game. Like, baseball is a very old game. It's like everyone's grandfathers are watching it. Their dads are watching it. Like, yeah, we watch it, but like, I wouldn't consider ourselves young. Like, there's teenagers just don't.
Ouch.
I know, Harrison.
Ouch.
I know.
Just slammed the door on me hard, man. Jeez.
Close the casket now.
Okay. Yeah, wow.
But seriously, like, I'm talking like teenagers, young kids that want to go to the baseball game, like, by themselves or with a group of friends. Like, it's not happening. Baseball is losing the young generation, and they need to bring somebody to the forefront. Who do you guys think should be the face of baseball?
Can I just throw a little factoid out there for a second? So just on the Barry Bonds topic, if you are 21 years old today, you were born the year Bonds hit 73 home runs. Like, that's literally how far
What?
back we're talking about this happening. He hit
Jeez.
73 home runs in 2001. So if you aren't 21 years old, you didn't even see that season. So you want to talk about like your teenagers being thoroughly confused with what's going on in baseball? You're arguing about it. They're arguing about a guy who might have done something before they were even alive, and can't figure out why this game is so screwed up.
Goodness. Yeah, that just put the nail in the coffin. We are old. Okay,
Yeah.
so anyways, like who do we think the face of the MLB should be right now? And it could be more than one. I mean, look at the NFL. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Every time there's a commercial break, it's either Mahomes, Rodgers, or freaking Baker Mayfield.
Oh,
You know, like I
the
mean,
worst.
yeah. I mean, who would you guys put?
So real quick, we got a vote here for Freddie Freeman, pretty solid
I
one,
mean, yeah, absolutely.
Freddie's a good one.
and then
I mean, there's a
Stand
ton
up
of guys.
there.
Vladdy Jr.
I mean, these two here, Freeman, Vlad, Shohei, Fernando Tatis, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
Trout is one that's the bit, but he's not going to promote. It's not his personality. Like, he's not the
No.
guy. I mean, he doesn't do ads. Like, he doesn't do, you know, so as talented as Mike Trout is, like, he's not going to lead the charge on that.
No.
You know, I mean, there's a ton of guys, especially a ton of young Latin American players that are coming up and just insanely talented, energetic guys that have extremely likable personalities, like insanely likable personalities. You know, Tatis is one that I'm thinking of about the likable personality.
Love
Like
him.
that dude comes on TV, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a game you're watching, like how does that guy not like give you energy by watching it? Like
Yeah.
I get energy from that guy, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's just such a fun-loving guy. And there's a ton of guys like that, and particularly Latin American guys. Like you got to start promoting them. You got to start putting them, you know, they're not hurting for money. I mean, when you look at these reports that are put out, baseball's making money year after year, aside from the COVID year, obviously, but no one made money. But,
Yeah.
you know, the way that they did, let's put it this way. Back in the 90s, Griffey was everywhere, right? Griffey was
Yeah.
promoted. Ken Griffey Jr. was the kid with the hat on backwards and the big, awesome smile. And his dad was in baseball, and he was the young kid that was coming up in the 90s. He could do it all. He could hit, he could field. He was everywhere. They were promoting that video game, that Ken Griffey Jr. video game on every other commercial on every major
So
network
good.
at prime time, right? It was everywhere. They got to start doing that. They got to pick, and it's not just one guy. There's a ton of guys out there that you can pick and you can promote. And, you know, they got to do it. They got to put the money down, and they got to do what they got to do to promote these guys. Because I can tell you right now, like Sarah, my fiance, not a huge baseball person. She knows who Fernando Tatis is. She knows who Shohei is. Like these guys are people that when they do get out there, the limited exposure they do have, they make a mark on people. I don't think she knows who Mike Trout is, and I don't think it's anywhere close to he's the best player in baseball. But he's not. He doesn't have that personality, so he's not the guy to lead the charge.
Yeah.
There's guys out there. You gotta put the investment in, and those guys have to bring it forward.
And it's not even just like here, like globally, Tatis and Ohtani have an impact, a huge impact globally. Like baseball could, I mean, let's fix this before we go here. But I mean, they just have so much potential, and again, they're stuck in the 40s and just don't want to do anything about it. It's so frustrating. Like I'm not saying I could do a better job, but I feel like I would have more forward thinking than what these old bags have in the front offices. Like unreal.
Well, I think the problem ultimately comes down to like it's just a group of people that all have the same type of thinking. There doesn't seem to be any kind of diversity or outside the box thinking. I mean, we've used it before, the example, but I mean, their awards show this year, they announced their awards in a press release on the exact same Monday night of the national championship football game. Like you could have picked any Monday in January, any Monday, and that's the Monday you decided to do a press release. Like, is there no one out there being like, hey guys, I don't think that's a good idea. Like maybe we should do a different day. Maybe we should do Tuesday. Like we're putting it off a day, but we have our own network. Maybe instead of showing Bull Durham at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, we can really advertise this. Great movie, but maybe we can advertise this award ceremony. Right? Like, is there anybody out there? Or is there somebody doing that? And then the commissioner's just like, no. And if that's the case, we need a new commissioner, which I already think we need a new commissioner anyways. But if that's the case, if there is someone doing this and the commissioner's just like, no, this is my show, you got to go. You got to go because it ain't working.
No.
Well, I think the last two commissioners you've had have been nothing more than they were handpicked by the owners because they were puppets that were going to do as they were told, and
but that's the job.
They had no vision. They were just there to dance when the owners told them to dance.
The commissioner in every sport, the commissioner is picked by the owner. But you need to have somebody like, and if we can shit all over Roger Goodell all we want, and God knows he's not perfect, and God knows there's been some issues with his, discipline issues in the NFL and whatnot. Roger Goodell is no question a puppet for the 32 owners in the National Football League. But one thing Roger Goodell does do very well for the league is promote the league. And he gets people out there and he invests in the NFLs everywhere. And they're expanding. And they're doing games in Mexico and they're doing games in London. That doesn't happen without investment from the commissioner's office and the league itself, putting money, putting time, putting effort, and thinking outside the box on, hey, how do we do this? They tried NFL Europe like 10 years ago and it failed. And instead of just saying, well, it didn't work, they revisited it. They say, well, you know what? It seemed to do all right. Maybe not as good as we wanted. It wasn't worth that league wasn't worth the money, but they still like us over there. Let's figure this out. That's what baseball needs. A commissioner that says, hey, I know I work for the owners. I know the owners are going to tell me what to do, but the part of growing the game is my job, not the owner's job. And if you're waiting for the owners to come up with the ideas, they don't give a shit. They're making money one way or the other. You're the one that has to grow the game, and it has to be your office coming up with these ideas. And it doesn't seem like they're doing any of that.
And that's what a commissioner should be doing. They should be they are the chief executive officer. They are the visionary of the league that's taking it to the next level. And Goodell's done a good job of that. But at the same time, in his defense, when teams have stepped out of line, he has not been afraid to slap them back, put them back in place. I look at what happened. The guy suspended Brady for 4 games over questionable footballs. He went after the Saints aggressively for the bounty thing. He went after the teams that were pumping in crowd noise. And he right now is in the middle of this shit show with Kroenke, the owner of the Rams, over the lawsuit in St. Louis. And he's the one pushing the issue back on the Rams and telling him to figure it out. So yeah, as much as he is very much kind of directed by the owners, I will say the one thing he's done that the MLB commissioner's never done is when an owner gets out of line, he has slapped them back into place. And I think that comes with the fact that he's probably earned the right to do that, given what he's done to build the game and also build their checkbooks.
I mean, they have some good ideas. Like the Field of Dreams game, probably the highest rated game that's been viewed in quite some time. Great idea. They had a couple regular season series in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. Like crazy sellouts, crazy crowd, amazing. I love that they go to Williamsport every year during the Little League World Series. That's the stuff we need to do. Like a lot of, like not just 3 times a year and be like, okay, we're done.
Right.
Like
it's all about brand building and exposure. But I think so. Take a look. So 2021, the most popular jerseys in baseball. These are the players the fans are basically saying, I want them to be the face. Your leading jersey sales, number 1 was Mookie Betts, had sold more jerseys than anybody. Fernando Tatis Jr. second, Ronald Acuna Jr. was third, and then you had Javier Baez to round out the top 4. So 4 big, aside from Mookie Betts, you've got 3 guys there who are big personality guys in Tatis, Acuna, and Baez. Mookie Betts is a very quiet dude, like Mike Trout, wants nothing to do with the spotlight necessarily. Didn't like Boston for that reason, but seemed to find his thing in LA. But, the fans are basically saying, we like you guys a lot. Like, we're going to buy your stuff. And yet, when was the last time you saw Mookie Betts in anything? When was the last time you saw Acuna or Tatis? My pick for the face of baseball, because honestly, I don't think neither of those 3 of those, the top 3 guys there won't do it. Acuna is not mature enough, and he doesn't have the language well enough to be a really good ambassador yet. He'll get there. Tatis is a bit of a, kind of a brat in many ways, and has players in baseball that don't necessarily like him, just like Manny Machado, the same stupid stuff. These guys they're aggressive, they're passionate, and they tend to do stupid stuff. My pick in it is Juan Soto. He's young, he's Dominican, he speaks Spanish and English very fluently. The guy puts up monster numbers. He's in Washington, D.C. That's convenient. I feel like Soto's the guy that you could run out there and put in front of the world, and they would accept him. because he's not loud, he's not brash, he's not obnoxious. He's very well spoken, he's very thoughtful, and he's young. He's 23 years old. The guy's going to get attention, and he's going to stick with that younger crowd. So I feel like of that group of young players, I think, Sean, you nailed it. There's a number of these Latino players coming in that, big personalities and, are exciting. And I think Juan Soto is probably the best package of them that you could run out there and put in front of a national audience and have them accept him. I don't know if the other guys are there yet in terms of their ability to kind of rein it in and deliver a message, but I think you could run Soto out there tomorrow and the fans would love him. Ultimately, I think Trout was always supposed to be that guy, but he's just never going to be that guy. Mookie Betts is number 2. He's never going to be that guy. And then you're left with that pool of really dynamic Latino players that you got to grab one of them and run with it, because they can bridge that gap between the English and Spanish community.
Yeah,
Who
it
says
doesn't
it
have
has
to
to
be
be one guy?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be one. I mean, you got this
Right.
pool of guys. Use them all. Use them all.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know one thing. I think they picked out one guy. Was it Tatis last year or 2 years ago that was on the cover of the MLB The Show? That's something. That's a start,
Yep.
right?
Shohei
that's at
Ohtani's
least-
this year.
Yeah,
just
so that's
released
at least an acknowledgement that, hey, we know that these guys are likable guys. We know that these guys. So just go with it. It seems like they seem to know. Then let's just go with it, and let's goddamn update our social media policy. Let people tweet shit about baseball. Good Lord. I mean, I scroll through Twitter, man, and all I see is like 3 out of every 30%, 3 out of every 10 is like a targeted ad for the NFL, or it's some targeted ad about what Connor McDavid did the night before in the NHL. And then, I know it's not baseball season right now, but during baseball season, there's none of that. There's none of it. Like, you got to update that. It's far too long overdue. Like, let's get it out there. Let people talk about it. That's how people get their news now. They don't read newspapers. They don't read box scores. They look at highlights on social media. You got to update it. You just have to.
I saw a guy reading a paper. I saw a guy reading a paper at the diner the other day, and I was shocked. I was like,
Good
yeah.
like, where did you find that? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
like,
Good
goodness gracious. Well, yeah.
Yep.
I
laugh.
agree with him.
I laugh. My neighbor still gets the paper. He's 85 years old, but he gets it. I just, it's gone. I mean, I used to, to your point, Sean, I used to love reading the box scores. Used to love it.
Sure.
Do they even publish them anymore? I mean, I haven't seen a newspaper in 15 years. I mean, are they still even in there?
Listen,
Couldn't tell
let
ya.
me set the record straight right now. I would love to still read a box score if it was the only way to get the information, but it's not.
No.
It's not. So there's plenty of ways to get more information quicker. So
Yeah.
let us use it.
And I think you hit it last week when you said, like Hulu's got all the hockey games for what, $7 a month? Like, yes, MLB has MLB TV or whatever, but it's freaking $49 a month or something like that. Like, make it affordable for people to watch baseball. Like, it's crazy. Like, even if like one of us got the account for this next upcoming season, we split it, we're still paying $25 a month per person. Like,
It's insane.
yeah, there's no need for it. Baseball's struggling. It's very, it's very obvious, and they got to do more than just release this lockout. They got to get the lockout, get baseball going, and then they really need to sit down and hash some of these issues out, because if they don't, we're in a lot of trouble. Yeah, man. But yeah.
Oh, we got a deal here, Nick. We got to jump on that one. Sarah's
All right.
getting it cheaper.
Well, we're on it. Okay, so $50 a month for each of us. So okay, so
Actually,
we're on
it'd be
it.
like $37.50 if we split it with Sarah. So there's 4 of us. So
Yeah, good call. Good.
For the season. That's
But,
not for the
yeah.
month, boys. That was for the season. So that's
Yeah, for
actually
the whole
not
season,
counting.
right?
Which is probably the better deal, but yeah. But all right, well, we're on it. Sarah, send us the info. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah,
Just
just send us your login. That's all.
Yeah,
we need.
just your login information.
Yeah,
We don't need
better.
we just need your login information.
Yeah, just drop your login in the comments for us.
No, seriously, we'll wait.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're waiting on you.
But all right, yeah. So I mean, like I said, there can be more than one person to be the face for sure, and
It should
I
be.
think that's
It
just
should be.
what. Yeah. Mhm.
Football's got a ton.
Yeah.
And it always has. You know, it was never just Tom Brady. It was Tom Brady and Peyton
Right.
Manning, and before that, it was John Elway and Brett Favre and Jim Kelly. Like it's always a group of people.
Yeah.
You know, it's so take it,
Right.
take the group of them, and just figure it out. Figure out a way. You know, when these teams are scheduled to when it's I don't know, LA and San Diego, God knows they play enough in a year. Half of them are on ESPN, or half of them are free for people to watch on MLB.com or whatever. Just make it available. I mean, you want to, you know, guys like Mookie Betts and Fernando Tatis are up there in the top 3 for jersey sales. Then you're right. That means people want to watch them. So let them watch them. Schedule the games and yeah, it sucks that it's 4:00 local time, but that's what you need to do right now in the meantime, people to watch these games. So you put them on at 4:00 LA time. I get to watch them at 7:00. It's free for me to watch on ESPN.com or whatever. Like, figure it out. Let's just figure out a way to get these guys in front of people so that they can watch how good they are at baseball.
And then,
I mean,
publish out the highlights.
It's simple and complicated, but it's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, publish out the highlights too. And something big happens in a game, you know, throw it on social media. You know, put clips out there. Keep people coming back and keeping an eye on what's going on. Don't let it just go stale. You know, continue to. That's what the NFL is so good at. You know, 5 minutes after the big touchdown happens, like they got video clips everywhere. Like you may not be watching the game, but you can just like keep an eye on their Twitter feed or their Facebook page. You're going to see it eventually.
Just look at that DK Metcalf like chase down, right? How many memes came out of that? You know, like I mean, that it's just stuff like that. But Morgan makes up another great point right here. You know, start hyping the kids that you know are going to be top prospects coming out of the minors. You know, the Cubs did that with Chris Bryant. You know, like they hyped him up before they got to the big leagues, and then, you know,
the whole world did it with Bryce Harper.
Right, and he was out of high school.
I know.
He got signed, and everybody knew who Bryce Harper was.
He was 16 years old on the cover of SI. I mean, that was, you know, like generational type talent. That's, you know, that was like LeBron or Kobe back in the day when they were hoping good super young. But
like,
but still, I mean, you know, and that's the hard part too, is when you look at the development of a Major League Baseball player, it is so much harder to get a guy through the minor leagues into the pros than it is to go from like NFL or NBA to go from college to the pros like that. You know, it's so hard to tell if these guys are going to make it or not. I mean, for every Bryce Harper, there's 20 guys that showed up and sucked.
Yeah. That's the hard part too. Is you also have to be careful of that, because if you start hyping up all these young kids and 19 out of the 20 don't make it, by the time you hype up that 21st kid, I'm going to be like, I'm not watching this. Like, I'm not watching any more of the, like, it is that much to make it through the minors. Like, I don't disagree. You know, I think hyping up some of these young kids coming from the minors is important. It's just going to be, it's way more difficult in baseball than any other sport. It just truly is.
Yeah. Let's start with hyping up the guys that are already there, and then we'll build to hyping up guys that are in the pipeline.
Yeah. But I mean, Wander Franco had a lot of hype around him this year, and he didn't disappoint.
No,
I mean,
he didn't.
He arguably could have won Rookie of the Year. Probably should have.
Without a doubt.
Randy Arozarena is not a rookie in my eyes. Like, he's been on the roster for 10 years. I mean, I don't know how you're Rookie of the Year after your 10th season, but I mean, like,
late bloomer.
Whatever. That's where
I don't understand the rules around what makes you a rookie, considering the fact that he was with St. Louis in 2019, with the Rays in 20, Rays again in 21. I mean, he didn't play a lot of games, but his guy's been in the league 3 years.
He hit 9 postseason home runs and then won Rookie of the Year the next year.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No. Anyways, all right. So MLB needs to fix a lot of things. We have come to the conclusion 45 minutes later. Okay, moving on.
Boom.
We're going to go to 7th inning stretch here. We are in the NL West, so we are in the last division of our Mount Rushmore. I have the Giants and Rockies. Sean has the Dodgers in the Padres, and Harrison's got the D-backs. So, Sean, you go first.
Go first. I'll do San Diego first. I mean, number one, Tony Gwynn, obviously. I mean, is there any? He's literally the greatest Padre of all time. 15 All-Star games, 5 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, 8-time batting champion. I mean, the numbers that this guy has, we could go on. I know we don't have like another 45 minutes, but like some of the stupid numbers about like him against Hall of Fame pitchers is just disgusting. So Tony Gwynn, number one, obviously. Number two, Trevor Hoffman. I don't think that's really any up for debate either. The most unfortunate thing for Trevor Hoffman is the guy who kind of played the same era as Mariano Rivera. So it was really year after year, the guy was just kind of overshadowed. And then Eric Gagne came along in the same division. The guy just had tough timing when it came to his career. But he was awesome. I mean, it's Major League's first player to reach 500 and 600 save milestones. It's just he was as equally as unfortunate too, playing in San Diego. And back in the day, I it's hard to blame Major League Baseball for not getting those guys because they just didn't have really the avenue. There was no MLB Network back then. There was no social media. So, it was just kind of, it was just like when they made the postseason, you got to watch them in the postseason. So it was a bit unfortunate in that sense, but that guy was pretty much automatic coming out of the bullpen for them. Dave Winfield, number 3. 1977, I thought this was pretty cool. 1977 appeared in his first All-Star game at Yankee Stadium, but then really burst in 1977, then 1978. Padres team captain, 1979. He batted over 300, had 120 RBIs. Guy became a really good hitter in San Diego in the late 70s. And I think it helps, 1977 really coming on the scene, playing in the All-Star game in New York. I know the All-Star game is always kind of a big thing, but, you're talking about New York. This guy comes in and really bursts on the scene.
My favorite Dave Winfield stat, he was drafted by 4 professional leagues. Drafted by MLB, NFL, the NBA, and the ABA.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Drafted in awesome. 4 leagues. Yeah.
Yeah, guy's a pretty good athlete, huh?
Yeah, he's all right.
He's all right.
And then number 4, we talked about him earlier, but Ken Caminiti. Love Ken Caminiti.
Loved him.
That was another guy, too. We talked in San Diego in like the mid-'90s, but I was born in 1990. So I was like little kind of when Ken Caminiti, 1996, when he brought them to the playoffs, set career highs and all that stuff. But I remember kind of watching Ken Caminiti. What year was it that they made it to the World Series there? 99, 98? And they obviously they lost. They
Pretty
lost
sure it's 99.
Yankees, but 99. He still has he might still have. I still have to look it up. 130 RBIs in 1996, 40 home runs, hit about 330. So that guy was a pretty damn good hitter as well. He didn't necessarily have the career longevity, but I don't know who else are you going to put on Jake Peavy. I mean, I like Jake Peavy, but he's not on like a Mount Rushmore type of thing. So I went with Caminiti for 4.
Nice. I have other the Giants first, since Morgan's probably waiting. What's up?
Hang on. I bought the Ken Caminiti glove when I was in Babe Ruth League, and I just got to show you guys what this glove looked like. It was this glove right here.
Yeah.
I had that glove when I was in playing Babe Ruth ball. The flames up the back side of it, the black, the two-tone. That was my favorite glove.
And you thought you were a badass.
I was playing third base. It was the hot corner. My glove had flames on it. You're friggin' right. I was a badass.
Nothing's changed.
I mean,
Still
exactly.
a badass.
Some things never change.
All right. So I'm gonna do the Giants here. Willie Mays, 660 home runs, first 5-tool player. I mean, slam dunk. Number 2, Barry Bonds. Everyone knows his stats. I really don't have to go into that. I mean, just silly, stupid. Number 3, I got Willie McCovey. I mean, when the Cove is named after you, I think you're doing all right. 521 home runs out of his 2,200 hits. So a quarter of his hits were home runs. Pretty good. 270 average and 1,555 RBIs. And then number 4, I just couldn't. I mean, there's so many Giants I could have picked, but this guy, Christy Mathewson, he was in the first Hall of Fame class. His average season, he was 21-11. His average season. He had a career 2.13 ERA, and that's with an 8 ERA in his last year of his career in Cincinnati. 1908, going back just a couple days, he was 34-11. But this is the crazy part, right? He had a 1.28, a 1.43, a 1.14, and a 1.19 four seasons. And then 13 out of his 17 seasons, he was below a 2.5 ERA. The guy just didn't let anyone score. I mean, yeah. But again, like there's so many, like Gaylord Perry, Buster Posey, Juan Marichal. There was so many I could have put on there. That was just to name a few, but yeah, those 4 are definitely on my Mount Rushmore for the Giants.
Nice. All right. I had the D-backs, so unlike the Giants, there's really not a lot of history to work with. They came into the league in 1997. They won the 2001 World Series against the Yankees, and they've been pretty much a mediocre organization for all the years in between that. So, first of all, welcome to Arizona. You have to remember this is the ballpark with the hot tub that's out in this area somewhere. Quite the ballpark. But so for the most part, I leaned heavily on 2001 because after their expansion draft, they went heavy into free agency to try to build a winner so baseball would stick. So they brought in Randy Johnson, who was pretty good. Won 4 straight Cy Youngs while he was there, as well as co-MVP of the World Series. His partner in crime was Curt Schilling, also pretty good. Neither one of those guys was there that long, 5 years, but that was the longest. But that's all it took to make an impact on an organization that's only 25 years old. So Curt Schilling was his partner in crime, and then offensively, Luis Gonzalez was the guy that really kind of steered that offense for all those years. He had the game-winning blue pit. The guy had 50 home run seasons, and he was very much the offensive anchor of that organization for the beginning of their existence. And then the last player for me was Paul Goldschmidt. He was kind of the guy that was left to carry the torch for the organization after the success. He came in a few years later. And he was runner-up MVP two out of his first 3, or two out of his first 4 seasons. Really kind of carried that offense when they were really pretty mediocre. And then obviously when the opportunity came, was traded away and moved on. But he really was Luis Gonzalez was the anchor in the beginning, and then he kind of passed the mantle to Paul Goldschmidt, and who knows who will be, the future there. But those are the 4 I went with in the limited history I had to pick from.
No Craig Counsell, no Tony Womack. Come on now.
I so badly wanted to put Counsell on there, but he's only there for 3 years. I was shocked that I felt like he'd been there forever, and he really wasn't.
No.
Goldie
and
was
as
so
Sarah
good,
says, it is a cool ballpark. I think having the hot tub and stuff out there is weird for a baseball stadium, but it is a cool ballpark.
Talking about Goldie, man, that guy, especially his time in Arizona, like you said, I mean, they were not very good. They were not very competitive in the division, which isn't exactly the hardest division either. But that guy was guaranteed 300, 310 hitter, guaranteed close to triple-digit walks, 75 to 80 walks, 100 walks. I mean, didn't strike out much, and he was an absolute vacuum at first base. I still think to this day, he is an underrated first baseman, which is crazy to say, but I just feel like he doesn't get talked about enough. He is so good. Hits to all fields, power, on base, everything. I mean, he just seems like such a professional hitter and a professional guy. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but I love watching him play. And I selfishly was pumped when he ended up in St. Louis. Pumped.
Oh, I know.
Such a better market, such better fans to play for. Obviously, a better ball club. But yeah, I mean, he is. That's a good one because I love that guy.
Yeah, his best season as a Diamondback was 2015 when he finished runner-up for the MVP. The guy hit 321 with a 435 on-base percentage, 33 home runs, 33 home runs, 110 RBIs, 118 walks. He's the all-time franchise leader in career WAR among position players, in OBP, slugging, OPS, and walks. He doesn't have the hits and home run and RBI titles. He kind of falls in behind Gonzalez, but he put up some numbers in the time he was there. Guy could mash.
Yeah,
just a really pretty swing. Balanced, controlled.
Agreed.
If it was a good pitch, he did not miss it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So then, Sean, you got the Dodgers.
I got the Dodgers. Number one, obviously, Sandy Koufax. I don't think that is disputed really by anybody. Guy played for the Dodgers organization for all 12 years. Obviously, the first 3 years they were in Brooklyn, but then they moved to LA, 58 or whatever it was. So he ends up in LA. Oddly enough, his first 6 years of his 12-year career, it was really nothing special. I mean, he was fine. I mean, he was in the high 3s, low 4s for ERA. Nothing really remarkable. 500, he went 11-11 in 58, 8-6 in 59, 8-13 in 60, and then 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. All stars. 63, 64, 65, and 66. He either won the Cy Young 3 times or finished in the top 3. 5 out of the last 6 years led the league in ERA, 4 of which was under 2. 188 and 63, 174 and 64, and then retired after 66 with a 173 ERA after winning 27 games. He went 27-9 in his final year, and then he was like, I guess I'm just going to hang it up. So he's number one. But I found that I didn't know that about Sandy Koufax. Like, I didn't know his career was kind of very rigidly split kind of in half.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Very Barry Sanders.
Yeah, right. Like retiring when he did. Number 2, Jackie Robinson would have been number 1, obviously, for any other franchise except if it wasn't for Sandy Koufax. Jackie Robinson. I mean, everyone knows who Jackie Robinson is and what Jackie Robinson did. So that's 2. Number 3, Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw, and I know he kind of gets a bad rap for the postseason struggle, the way that it ended the past couple of years and whatnot. This guy went to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive All-Star games. He went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive years finishing in the top 5 Cy Young. Won the MVP in 2014. 4 consecutive years of leading the National League in ERA. I mean, I think it's kind of sullied his overall accomplishments, the fact that he really did have those postseason struggles, which, I mean, if we're going to give Curt Schilling the credit for the postseason success, obviously Clayton Kershaw deserves some of the blame, if you will, for the postseason struggles. But that shouldn't diminish what this guy did for that stretch of time in LA as a starting. I mean, he was the guy. I mean, he was guaranteed. You had to tune in every 5 days to watch what Clayton Kershaw was going to do.
So good.
It was dominant. I mean, and it was coming from a lefty, and he had that sneaky heat, and he had that hook. And we talk about, like, from the very beginning, like, he could outpitch you. He would just figure out ways. Oh, he was awesome. Everything about him, Nick. I love him. I
hate that stretch. You just like.
I still love him. I love him.
It takes forever.
I love him. And then number 4, not a player, but Vin Scully. Vin Scully's my number 4 on the Dodgers Mount Rushmore. I love Vin Scully.
That's a great call.
Everything about Vin Scully. I love when he would just do games with no color guy. Like he would be the play-by-play and the color guy, and then somehow you'd be like, it doesn't, like, you would think that listening to a broadcast like that would be weird. You'd be like, something would be missing, except not with Vin. It was awesome. This guy was awesome. I wish I went ahead and kind of got the clip, but there's a clip, you guys can find it. It's all over YouTube, where I don't even remember who the player was, but he was like called out on third strike, didn't like the call, goes into the dugout and he starts beating the balls off of the dugout full, right? Just takes a bat and he starts beating it. And Vin Scully's like narrating him, like beating up the phone with a bat. And it was laughable. Like Vin was as serious as can be. Like he wasn't like making jokes. It was just Vin, just like he knew his job was to describe things. So like he just described it. It was hilarious. And then all these records, I mean, this guy calling all the NFL games, all the big World Series. He did radio, he did TV, and everything he did was top notch. So Vin Scully, number 4. Can't go without Vin Scully.
That's so good.
It's a good call.
That was a great one.
Thank you.
All right, I'll finish it up with the Colorado Rockies. And we got first one, Todd Helton hit over 300 in his first 10 seasons as a Rocky. He was the last player to really have any push to a 400 season. He hit 372 in 2000. He had 216 hits, 59 doubles, 147 RBIs. He's a 5-time All-Star. He averaged 36 homers and 121 RBIs per year in his career. So he was okay. I mean, yeah, but it's just because it's at Coors Field. His numbers are inflated.
For
Stupidest argument. Okay, number 2, Larry Walker, Hall of Famer, 4-time All-Star, 25 home runs season average, 97 MVP, 49 home runs, 130 RBIs, and 33 stolen bases in that year.
Those are just inflated Coors Field numbers.
Exactly. Again. Same with this guy, Nolan Arenado, 7 Gold Gloves in the first 7 season. That's just because of Coors Field. 3 straight platinum gloves.
Yeah, because look at Arenado in St. Louis. He sucks now. He's awful.
Terrible. 3 straight platinum gloves. That's
ridiculous.
Crazy. And I mean, not a slouch for the bat. 295, 227 homers, 734 RBIs in his career so far. Then the 4th one, I put him here because he led the Rockies to their first World Series. I think he was a big catalyst in that. And that's Matt Holliday. He led the Rockies to the first World Series in 2007. He was the NL batting champ and scored the winning run on the regular season tiebreaker. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he tagged up and he's going into home and he completely road rashes his entire face. And then they go on. But the couple guys that left off, Vinny Castillo, he was in that home run chase for a while with Sosa and McGuire and then faded off. And then Dante Bichette I left off. But I had to go with those 4.
No argument.
That 2007 Rockies team, man, like that was like almost a team of destiny. If they didn't run into the buzzsaw that was the Boston Red Sox, I mean, who knows? And I'm not like, but who knows what would happen in that World Series if it was, let's say, Cleveland. Let's say Cleveland pulls through. If aside from being the most snooze fest World Series of all time, Colorado versus Cleveland, but who knows? Colorado might have a World Series title. Like they just ran into an absolute buzzsaw that they just weren't. They didn't match up in any way, shape, or form to the Red Sox. But that team was kind of like a team of destiny. You think about the way that the regular season tiebreaker, the way that they win, and then the drama that was their entire playoff run. I mean, every game was wild. Every game was wild. I mean, they won how many walk-off games that postseason? I think it was like 3 or 4.
Oh, a bunch, yeah.
So they were that was like almost a destiny team, and then they just ran into the Sox in 07. It was four straight, but crazy.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the rounding third segment of our show here, where we did the most overrated player last week. We're going to do the most underrated. So I will start off with our viewer submissions here. And Nate Dunkley, miss him. We used to play baseball back with him in Maine. He said Bill Miller. So we kind of talked about Bill Miller a little bit last week with 2014 and all that stuff. And
Billy Miller's a good call.
But didn't he hit a grand slam from both sides of the plate in the same game against the Rangers? I think he did it early in the So, I mean, very great. That was a great choice.
And Billy Miller, not just to. Billy Miller was as clutch as you could get for the Sox in the postseason during that stretch. I mean, I think he's still only the number 9 hitter to win a batting title. mean, he was the 9th batter in the order the year he won the batting title. They bat him. He was the 9 hitter. I still think, I could be wrong, but I think he's the only number 9 hitter to win a batting title. That guy was so clutch and such a likable guy too.
Yeah. Stacy said Jim Abbott. I
Which is
mean,
good. That's a
I
good
like Jim
one.
Abbott.
Talk about it's such a great one. I mean, everybody knows Jim Abbott's story. I've read his bio. It's insane. Like, he tried so many prosthetic arms and hands, I mean, and he just ended up throwing them all out. And he's like, screw it. I'm just gonna go out there and put my glove on my nub and just beat you. And he has a no-hitter in there too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a great one. Morris says Derek Lee was always a guy I loved. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved D. Lee back in the day.
Yeah, very underrated for sure. And then Doug said David Eckstein. I mean,
Okay.
he was. I think he was underrated on that Angels team for sure. I mean, we talked about like Garrett Anderson. We talked about Troy Glass. We talked about all those guys, and like Eckstein was quietly
Tim
at the
Salmon.
top of that lineup. Tim Salmon,
sure.
right? He was quietly at the top of that lineup, and he was 2-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, World Series MVP. Nobody talks about it.
That's fine. That's
Because
fine.
he was Jose Altuve before Jose Altuve was.
Yeah, guy was 5'6" and $170.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, those are all great ones. Yeah, so that's all we have. What do you guys have on your side?
All right, I'll take this one. So one of the players I used to love to watch, and because he just made it look easy, was John Olerud. Here's a guy that got drafted in the 3rd round, skipped the minor leagues, went right to the major leagues. Aside from his final season in Boston, he was a platoon player. And then when he obviously came out, he didn't come up until September because he didn't get drafted until the summer. The guy averaged about 130 games played every year, 130, 135. Guy was out there pretty much every day. When you look at his career numbers, he had 1,275 walks and 1,000 strikeouts in his career. Never struck out 100 times, walked more than 100 times several times. Guy in 1993, the guy hit 363 with 54 doubles. He won a few Gold Gloves, a couple All-Star appearances. But when you look at his typical career season, the guy would have hit 295 with a nearly 400 on-base percentage. He strikes out 74 times a season, walks 92 times a season, 36 doubles, 18 home runs, 90 driven in. He was super steady, corner infielder with good defense, super just easy stroke. He never got fooled, and you can see that by the strikeout numbers. The guy just didn't strike out. He didn't chase bad pitches. He didn't look at good ones. Super steady. He was so good for the teams he was on. A part of a couple World Series championship teams, and just a guy that if he had maybe hit a few more home runs, would have been probably considered for an All-Star ballot appearance. But unfortunately, he didn't. He only had 2,239 career hits, and 255 home runs, which for a first baseman is low. But he was such a steady influence on the teams he was on. He's that one guy I always just wished he got, more, because he was just such a great player to watch.
He almost hit 400, I believe, in that season that Joe Carter hit the walk-off home run for the Blue Jays. He was chasing 400 for quite some time and very deep into the season.
He hit 363 that year, but he was flirting with 400 for a while.
Yeah, crazy. Sean, you underrated?
Derek Lowe. I thought Derek Lowe. Now, just hear me out on Derek Lowe. Derek Lowe's career ERA is like a smidge over 4. So I'm not sitting there saying Derek Lowe belongs in the Hall of Fame or anything of that stretch. He only made 2 All-Star games, which I think is a bit crazy. But again, the numbers never really blew you away. But if you think about what Derek Lowe did, Derek Lowe came up Seattle. They came to Boston in 1997, it looks like. 2000, he led the league in saves. He had 42 saves. He finished 64 games in the year 2000, 47 saves. He started off, he was a bullpen guy. And then they transitioned him in 2002 to a starter. Okay. 2002 was his first year as a starter. From 2002 until 2000 and through 2011. So it was 10 years. He started no less than 32 games. 33, 33, 32, 35, 34, 32, 34, 34, 33, and then 34. Okay. Now, again, the numbers don't blow you away. The guy was mid threes to high threes and maybe even snuck into the low fours for some of these years. But that bled into his time with the Dodgers in Atlanta. And this guy was just consistent. He would show up every 5 days and he would pitch. And if you remember, and I know you guys remember, Derek Lowe in 2004, when the Sox broke the curse, was left off of the starting rotation, left out, I should say, out of the starting rotation in the 2004 playoffs, right? I mean, they had Schilling and, those, and it was fine. It was probably the right decision. But the crazy stat that I had is Derek Lowe got wins in all 3 clinching series games. So Derek Lowe wasn't good enough to make, the starting rotation, that postseason roster, but they trusted him enough and he was good enough to come in out of the bullpen and he got the win in all 3 series clinchers, which was he just was a guy that you knew would get it done. And if you remember in 2003, they lost to the Yankees, but he's the one that closed out the Oakland A's in that divisional round. And that was out in Oakland. And that was a good, young, talented roster with some good, talented hitters. And Derek Lowe steps out on the mound and he gets the save. And, I just think people don't remember Derek Lowe. I think it doesn't help him that he kind of really trailed off. He went to Cleveland and Texas and really struggled at the end of his career. But for that 10-year stretch from 2001, let's call it, or even 2000 through 2011, 2012, and that guy was as consistent as you were going to get. Wasn't going to throw you a no-hitter, and he wasn't going to, blow your socks off, but you knew exactly what you were going to get every 5 days.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, he was a big part of that 04 team for sure.
Damn right.
Big part.
Right.
I have 2, and I'm having a really hard time to decide between the 2. So I'll just say them both because, hey, what the hell? Lou Whitaker, he was second baseman for the Detroit Tigers, had 19 seasons there. He hit 280. Power numbers weren't there, but he had a 75.1 WAR. And, I mean, he was on the Hall of Fame ballot for a year, and then the writers took him off the next. I mean, he was...
Shocker.
Yeah, right? I actually wrote that. I wrote that writers took him off. Surprise, surprise. But him and Alan Trammell were like one of the best double play combos in quite some time, before Alomar and Vizquel, or around the same time. But still, I mean, for him to not get any consideration at all was, I think, ridiculous. But this next one will be a viewer favorite, I think. Andrew Jones, underrated.
Love Andrew Jones.
400 plus home runs, 150 career stolen bases, 10 Gold Gloves. He is only one of 3 center fielders to have 10 plus Gold Gloves and over 400 home runs in a career. And he's the only one not in the Hall. The other 2, Willie Mays, Ken Griffey Jr. If you're going to have some company, those are the 2 center fielders. Yes, thank you. I got somebody that agrees with me about time. But, I mean, like, for him to get almost like 0 consideration is kind of foolish. I mean, like, 400 plus home runs and 10 plus Gold Gloves. I mean,
on a winning team that won divisions and constantly went to the postseason.
Absolutely.
So it's not like he did it on some, ragtag terrible roster.
Yeah.
Like he was leading the way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't. Yeah.
The thing with Andrew Jones is, the 10 Gold Gloves. Obviously, the league realized his defensive ability, but I don't think the average baseball fan appreciated that guy's defensive ability. Everybody thinks of Griffey and Edmonds with the crazy basket catches and diving catches and stuff like that. But the balls they were diving for, Andrew Jones was camped under, waiting for him to come down. Like the way that guy read the ball off of a bat and the ground he covered, I mean, he didn't have to dive. That's the thing. Like, the guy didn't have to dive. He was already under it.
I know
It
we don't
was
want to say it, but it's
unreal.
just like JD Drew, my man. Just like
Oh,
my
dude,
man
nope,
JD
nope.
Drew.
Nope.
Moving
Nope.
on.
Nope.
Offensively, no. But JD Drew could play right field as good as anybody, but he never got credit because everything looked routine. Everything looked routine to JD Drew.
This
And
is
it's
not the
same thing
most
with
overrated show, Sean.
same thing, same thing with Andrew Jones. I agree. Everything looked
totally.
just
Yeah.
natural. Everything was just like, oh, that was just an easy one.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm not saying he is the same player that Andrew Jones is saying. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that
people are
JD Drew
saying.
made every play he made in right field made it look easy. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
He's no
Just
he's
like
not
Manny
Andrew Jones.
Ramirez.
I'm not saying he's Andrew Jones. Oh, good lord.
Oh yeah. But no, you're right. There are those players, and JD Drew was one of them, that they seem to read the game at a different level, and they almost like
Yeah.
could predict it. And Andrew Jones, it took about a millisecond, and that guy was already at full tilt. And I mean, as shallow as he played, how many base hits did that guy take away playing that shallow? But also covering stuff back over his head, and then he had a hose. The guy could throw. I mean, he made the tough plays look routine because of the way he covered ground, and the average fan just thought he was a everyday center fielder, not really appreciating what that guy did out there.
Yeah, Andrew Jones is a great pick.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, so we are going to move on to our last segment here. We are going to be heading home, and we're just going to do a quick lockout update, and then we have a couple other announcements at the end, which is kind of cool that we're excited about. But yeah, you want to give us the latest on the lockout, Harrison? As I'm not very up to date on it that much. I mean, I know they met last Monday. And then they decided to meet on Tuesday, but I don't know what happened on Tuesday. I know the players dropped a whole bunch of stuff on Monday to try to get something moving, but I didn't hear what happened on Tuesday.
Right. So effectively the players, and we talked about on the show, the players had basically come back with their counter proposal, and they were willing to, I would say, give quite a bit. They did meet again on Tuesday. There was not much that came out of it other than further conversations around those items. I will say that during that, the owners did make the statement that they're not afraid to delay games. They're not afraid to push the season back. So I think the major takeaway from the Tuesday meeting was more so the owners took the stance of, we're here, we want to talk, we're willing to negotiate, but we're not afraid to push the season back and miss games. We're not we're not worried about that outcome, and if it happens, it's fine. So much so the MLBPA is actually beginning to kind of reach into its own funds and prepare to send checks out to players, because the MLBPA does actually have the ability to provide some supplemental payments to certain players in certain categories and all that. So the MLBPA is actually preparing to mobilize some funds potentially for those players that are at like the league minimum to help them, planning on this season being delayed to some extent. So, I mean, even if they agreed today, they wouldn't get the whole thing probably ratified and signed in the next 2 weeks when spring training, when pitchers and catchers report anyway. So at a minimum now you're looking at, they're going to have to delay spring training. How quickly they can get it together and how quickly they can get started back up is yet to be seen. But, teams are making moves in their front office. They're making minor league moves. There's been a number of players signed to minor league contracts. So things are still happening. But the players the owners are firmly taking the stance of, we're happy to negotiate, but we're not afraid to push the season back.
Yeah. And it's crazy because as soon as that lockout ends, man, those remaining free agents that haven't signed, it's gonna be nuts. It's gonna be a madhouse.
Yeah.
But yeah, can't wait for that. But all right. So before we go tonight, we are excited. On Sunday, we are going to have a crossover with another podcast. So we are going to join the M&M SOS podcast, and we are going to join their Crimes, Curses, and Conspiracies episode, and it's on Bud Selig. So it's gonna be a lot of discussion about the steroid era. Kind of a little bit of what we did earlier, but we are so excited. It will be them and us on the same episode, so that will be Sunday night, and then we'll see you guys back here on Monday. and then we'll have some other stuff coming down the pike, whatever it is. I don't know.
Either one.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's fine.
We're gonna do a MLB American League Mount Rushmore next week, and then we'll move on from there. But we will see you guys next Monday.
Sounds good. See you, boys
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
And girls.
and ladies.